Now here's another question. It's from Owen Flanders. And he's suggesting that there's a power that people like myself have over countless thousands of fans, mainly women, he says. Well, I'm not sure about that. But anyway, he said, do you consciously try to use that power or influence? Now, Owen, I think influence is probably a better word than power. You know, I always think that politicians have power over people. In the past, not so much now, religious leaders had power over people. But I think people like myself, people who merely have celebrity for whatever reason, could have influence over people. And yes, I think I've unashamedly used my position to influence people as best I can in hopes that it might enhance their lives. I mean, is it wrong to suggest that people give to charity because I do? No, they don't have to, of course, and I try to make that absolutely clear. I became a Christian. One of the biggest influences in my life is the fact that I know that Jesus exists and is part of my life. So I would want to share that. Using celebrity, obviously. I mean, if you remember, I don't do them much anymore. In fact, I don't do them anymore. Maybe there's a time for me to come and do another one or two of the gospel concerts I used to do. But I used to tell everybody, this is a concert about, the music will not be Devil, Woman, or We Don't Talk Anymore, but it'll be music that has a spiritual content. And it gave me the chance to speak about my faith. Now, I know that that influence doesn't necessarily have to work. The one good thing about Christianity is you cannot be cajoled into becoming one. I merely presented my case through my celebrity, and then it was up to the individuals that watched. So I think influence is by far the better word, and I think many of us have got the influence, and many of us have taken advantage of our position, and I hopefully feel that influence has been used wisely, and we've only tried to influence for good, and forgive us if we didn't. Now here's one from Teresa Cresswell. Oh, hang on, it's a double-barreled name. Teresa Cresswell Cross. And she said, have you got a bucket list of goals or dreams? Well, Teresa, when I started my career, I had a bucket full. And now it's kind of empty. Everything that I've ever dreamed of and wanted to do, I've managed to do. But if I had to start a new bucket, it would be a pretty small one. You know, one of the ones that kids take to a beach. Plastic one, probably. And I think I would... You see, I would love to go up in a hot air balloon, but insurance companies won't let me do it. The insurance is too much, and they don't want me to do it. So maybe one time when I've given up singing and have no need of an insurance company to stand over me, I'll go up in a balloon. That's what I'd like to do. Now, Margaret Kempton says, do you believe in fate and things happen for a reason? Fate's a difficult one, you know. Is it fate that people collapse into an earthquake, or, you know, a tsunami happens and people die in a tsunami? I guess that in a way is fate, and that it was not necessarily inevitable, and yet when you think back, it was inevitable. A tsunami happens because an earthquake happens down in the middle of the sea, sends up a huge wave, and that's it. There's a reason and there's a after effect, but I don't think anybody ever meant it. So I'm never quite sure how to answer the question about fate. As to things happening for a reason, I do think they happen for a reason. Usually, if something bad happens to you, it's because somehow or another you made a bad decision. Or if something good happens to you, it's because you made a good decision. Although that's not always true, because sometimes the bad that happens to you is because somebody else made a bad decision. Now, I know this is not a great answer. I don't know that there is a great answer. But I do think that usually we're very often at fault for the things that happen in our lives that we consider bad. And as to why they should happen, I think we're going to be positive. I think there is a reason, and one of the major reasons is that through going through some mishap or misunderstanding, we can come out the other side having learnt something. And therefore, having learnt something, we can get on with our lives with a more, or retain a positive attitude. You mustn't let us get it down. Let me see now. Now then, Richard Summersby, he says, of all the guitars that I've owned, is there one that means the most to me? Yes, there is. The first guitar I ever bought was way back in 1959. Move It had been the first record. Somewhere in 59, I think June or July, Living Doll was #1, and I could finally afford a guitar. Some of you may know that my father bought me my first guitar before I was a professional, When I turned professional on my first tour, on the last night in, where were we? Bristol, I think. Bristol, Colston Hall. It was stolen. My dad hadn't even finished paying for it yet. So anyway, fortunately, with my first royalties, we were able to pay that off. But when I could actually afford a real guitar, a good one, I bought a Gibson Jumbo, Gibson 500. I still have it, and it still sounds fantastic. It's the one I play on stage that's kind of a blonde color. It used to be a dark sunburst kind of color, but I changed it because it got cracked a bit. It got broken actually in one of my flights. I had it repaired, thinking it's never going to sound the same. Better than ever. So yeah, the Jumbo Gibson is my favorite. Now, okay, this is the last one. Jane Pinder says, if you could relive one event in your life, what would it be and why? Well, there's two events really. Forgive me if I take the opportunity to say that I'd like to say two are important. There are all sorts of things that have become important to me, but when you think of an event, apart from my Christian conversion, I don't need to relive that. That's with me all the time. But when The Young Ones was released, I can't remember, on a Friday, it was #1 on Monday. And remember, there were no sales on Sunday. So I'm thinking, oh my goodness, Friday and Saturday, in 2 days we were #1, and it was my first really fast-selling million seller. And I'll never forget, we were going on tour, the film had come out, and we were in Liverpool. And I think that's the first time I sang it live. I may be wrong about that, but I feel it is. Because when the Shadows and I came on stage, there was this electric hubbub in the audience, and you just knew that all they wanted to hear was The Young Ones. And we wouldn't do it for song after song after song. And right, I don't know, 15 minutes from the end, Hank went doodle-doo, and the place went, it erupted as soon as they heard the introduction. I'll never forget that feeling of going to #1 straight away and then having this incredible response. And during the course of that tour, of course, that response continued. So yeah, I wouldn't mind reliving that again. That's not likely to happen to me ever again. And the second thing is, with a record, I've said this before, it could be #1. It could even be a million seller, but you never, ever really know. You just can't say, I knew it would be. You knew that you hoped it would be, and you thought it might be. So it's always a surprise. But what happened to me when I got my knighthood was that a letter came out of the blue. You can't, it's not something you can even talk about. I mean, how can it possibly be that someone gets a knighthood? Knighthoods went to businessmen, to actors, and quite rightly too. I mean, I never begrudged them that, but it meant it was not on my radar. I never even thought about it. So when the letter came through that I was being offered a knighthood, and I can't remember the exact wording, but it was wording to the effect of, the Prime Minister is going to put your name forward to the Queen, that she would give you a knighthood. That was the request from the Prime Minister. If she decides to give it to me, would I accept it? Yes! Paper burned before I could even finish writing the word yes, please. So it was an absolute thrill. And I guess it's a thrill because it's something I couldn't bring it about myself. There's nothing I could do to do that. It's something I did do, funnily enough, but I never thought of it as being a way of getting a knighthood, and that was the charity work. I didn't get it for making records or selling 250 million records. I got it for the charity work that we've talked about earlier on in this session. So I was very, very thrilled that out of the blue something as wonderful as this happened, because it also meant that you were involved. It was to do with the fact that people in Britain were honouring me, and I found that extravagantly wonderful. And so, yeah, I'd like to relive that moment when I knelt and she put that sword on both shoulders, and when it was over, guess what they played? Congratulations and celebrations. And they just played that for Baby George. I'm thrilled. Anyway, the knighthood is what I'd like to live again. So that's it. That's your 10 questions out of about 800. Maybe we'll do this again sometime. I really enjoy speaking with you like this. Forgive any mistakes I make. Sometimes I over-talk myself and go too fast and babble, but I hope you've understood what I've tried to say. God bless you all, and we'll see you soon. I'll see you in the charts.